It can be really difficult to stay on track for years, especially if you're someone that's curious, you're open-minded, you're interested in many different things, you want to explore different domains. And this can cause you to miss out on the future benefits of staying on something for a very, very long period of time. And one way that I've seen that really helps people, and it's helped me as well, is developing your own soul in such a way that it allows you to stay on track for a very long period of time. And in this video, I wanted to explain a theoretical framework so that it can help you to understand what's going on and why you potentially can't stay on track for a long period of time, as well as give you an action item and a practical takeaway at the end that I've been using, so I've been able to stay on track with my own personal path for over half a decade. And by using this, I think it's really going to help a lot of people. Now, my name is Joe Yuli. I'm a philosopher. I'm absolutely obsessed with vocations and paths and callings, and that's why I'm here on places like YouTube, Substack. I host a podcast called the Career Archetypes podcast. That's why I have this online community that helps and guides people to choose the right career path with conviction by unearthing their very own career archetype, because it's my belief that every single person in this world has a calling, and it's a matter of tapping into what that calling is and then pursuing it in this lifetime to therefore have a more meaningful existence. And if we don't pursue that calling, then we can end up with this life of resentment and regret, and we can just end up with these sort of jaded figures in the end. And one of the reasons that people can't pursue their vocations is because they can't stay on track. Maybe they sort of know what that vocation is, but they keep veering off, right? They keep veering off into other domains, into other subjects, into other interests. And there's definitely something to be said about veering off and exploring these other domains. But if you're not able to stay on track with your main path, then there's no sort of accumulation or compounding effect when it comes to pursuing your path, and therefore you don't get any of the benefits. And so there's a real pain when it comes to veering off track too often and not being able to root into your actual path. And you end up missing out on what it is that you're meant for, and also developing yourself at a really, really high level. Now, there are a lot of sort of like tips and tricks out in the world as to how to focus and how to stay on path. And you hear people talking about this stuff all the time, right? Put your phone on airplane mode, have a news feed eradicator. This is something that I have on my computer as well. So, I do use some of these tips and tricks myself, but they often miss out on what's really, really important that needs to be developed here, which is developing your own soul in such a way that allows you to not only pursue your calling, but pursue it for a very long period of time, so that you're actually able to do the work that can only be done over a long period of time. And so I want to tell you a story to illustrate this. So once upon a time, there is a young man, and this young man is just going about life, and he has a little bit of money saved in his savings account. And he's sort of sitting at the table one day, and he's reading through the newspaper, and he sees in the newspaper that there is a blueberry farm for sale. And upon seeing that there's a blueberry farm for sale, he's like, oh, this is super interesting. I think I want to be a blueberry farmer. And so what he does is he gets some of his money that he saved up and goes and purchases this blueberry farm. So he goes ahead and purchases the blueberry farm. He's quite happy at this moment. He starts to plant these young blueberry bushes and begins nurturing them over a couple of weeks and starts to settle into this farm life. And as he's doing this, he's like, I could really do this for years. Now, he's feeling this way until he is sitting at his breakfast table one day and he's going through the newspaper again. And as he's flipping through the newspaper, he sees another blueberry farm for sale. And he looks at this and he's like, oh, this one's even better. It has better soil. It has more state-of-the-art equipment. And I don't have that stuff here at this current farm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell this farm and I'm going to go and buy that farm. And so that's what he does. He calls up the real estate agent and says, let's sell this farm. And he goes and buys this new farm. And upon buying this new farm, he hears that from the real estate agent that he sold his old farm to this old man with this gray beard. He doesn't really think much of it, and he just moves on to this new farm. And so there he is at this new farm, once again, planting these young blueberry bushes, and he's going about nurturing them, making sure that he's going to be able to, have a great crop that time. And he's going through this process all over again. Now, he's quite happy and content, and he says to himself, I could stay here for years. Until one day he's at the breakfast table and he's going through the newspaper and he sees another blueberry farm. However, this blueberry farm, it has better soil, it has the state-of-the-art equipment as well, but it's also situated and located in a way whereby it's close to a marketplace where he can go and sell blueberries. It's very, very close by, it would be lower cost. And he says to himself, oh, that is the farm for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sell this farm, even though we haven't sort of yielded any of the work here, and we're going to move to this farm, I'm going to sell this one, and then we're going to be in a better location, and it's just going to be better all around. So that's what he does. Calls out the real estate agent, says, I want to sell this farm, I want to buy this other farm, and he goes ahead with that process. Now he hears from the real estate agent that the farm that he's leaving was bought by this old man with this gray beard, and he thinks to himself, oh, the same guy has gone ahead and bought his second farm. So he's thinking, okay, that's kind of strange, but I'm not really going to think much about it. I'm going to move on to this new farm. So that's what he does. He goes on to this next farm, and he gets there, and once again, he starts to do the initial work. He starts to plant the young blueberry bushes. He starts to nurture them, water them, and he's going through this process. He now believes he's in a better situation, and he starts working this farm. And he works it for over a year. And he says to himself, this is it. I'm very, very happy here. This is where I'm meant to be. And that is until he goes ahead and he's reading the newspaper again at breakfast, and he sees yet again another farm that's a blueberry farm, and it's got better equipment, it's got better soil, it's got a better location, right? It's better situated next to the same marketplace, but also it has other people, employees already on the farm, and they come with it, and they said they're going to stay on if somebody purchases this farm. And he's like, that's an even better situation. I do need people working on my farm. I'm going to go ahead and sell this one. Now, he's wasted basically all of his life savings up until this point, and he's going to pour this very last bit of money into this new farm. And so that's what he does. He calls up the real estate agent, and he says, hey, I'm going to sell this farm, and I'm going to move on to this new farm. The real estate agent says, that's totally cool. We'll sell it. And upon selling it, he ends up hearing that he sold it to this old man with this gray beard again. And he's thinking, the same guy has bought farm one, he's bought farm 2, he's bought farm 3. So he tells the real estate agent, when the guy comes to collect the keys, I want to be the person that gives him the keys and hands over my farm to him. And the real estate agent says, that's totally cool. So the old man with the gray beard ends up rocking up to his farm that he's just sold. And the young man comes up to this old man, and he hands him the keys, and he says, I'm really, really curious. You bought my first farm, you bought my second farm, you bought my third farm, right? None of which, I had brought to fruition. I was able to harvest a crop. I wasn't able to get any blueberries from it. And you continue to buy these different farms. So why did you do this? And the old man, he's kind of smiling at him at this point, and he says, well, you've come in to all these farms, you've done the initial work, you planted the plants, and all I had to do was come in to all these farms that I've bought from you and basically just stay put and do not much at all, and then I would be able to harvest all of these blueberries from all these different farms. Now, I tell you that story to sort of indicate this idea of developing the soul, developing your deeper nature and your true essence. Now, when I'm talking about the soul, I'm talking about your true nature. I'm talking about your divine state of being. I'm talking about this part of you that exists post-death. And this story illustrates that there is this young man and this old man, both are the same person at a different phase of their development. The young man is impulsive, he's impatient, and he continues to go for what's new and what's better and continues to move from farm to farm, but never reaps the rewards of his current farm that he's at. The old man, however, understands that you need to be patient, that you need to stay put at times, and that you need to harvest initial ideas, initial seeds. And if you don't do that, you're always going to be moving on and chasing the new thing, chasing the next thing, but you have no roots, you have no grounding. You have no ability to get the rewards from staying in a place for a very, very long period of time. And this happens with people that don't go ahead and pursue their vocation in such a way whereby they're developing their own soul. And instead, they're constantly jumping to the next thing, to the new thing, rather than facing certain patterns that are actually causing them to not be able to properly walk their path. And I experienced this very firsthand. I remember when I was, this was quite a long period of time ago, I was taking an online course, And a part of that online course, it was all about doing something consistently for over 90 days. And so what I ended up doing was I printed out this calendar and I stuck this calendar on my wall. And what I ended up doing was I would cross off the days as I would do each task every single day. And it would go, day 1, cross it off, did the task. Day 2, cross it off, did the task. Day 3, just continued to cross it off. Day 40, day 50. And what ended up happening the very first time I did this was around day 65. I ended up finding something new to do. I was like, instead of doing day 66, there's this other new thing that I just saw, and I actually want to go ahead and pursue this. I can't actually remember, funnily enough, what exactly that new thing was. It could have been, hey, I want to go and read some Nietzsche, or suddenly I got an interest in Emerson, and I want to go ahead and pursue those ideas. And what I did was I left this calendar cold. I left this task cold. I stopped doing it, and I started pursuing something new. And I started pursuing that new thing, only to realize, hey, I hadn't actually finished what I actually did. So I stopped doing that and I came back to the original online course and I started going through it again. I said, okay, I'm going to start completely from scratch. I'm going to go back to day 1 and I'm going to do this for 90 days. And so I started again. Day 1, cross it off. Day 2, cross it off. Day 3, cross it off. Keep going on, day 30, day 40. And then I ended up hitting, funnily enough, day 65 again. And around the exact same time, I started getting an impulse to do something new. And this feeling of, hey, do something new was the first time that I recognized this pattern of exactly around the day of day 65, I was wanting to do something new. And it was this deep underlying meta pattern whereby I got this impulse to do something new around that day. And this pattern was playing out both on a micro level, but also on this bigger macro level, whereby I would be pursuing things for a period of time, but I was never seeing them through, never going to the end, never reaping what I had started, always constantly moving on to something that was new, that was shiny, that was more interesting. And I actually call this the disease of new, whereby people that have already really nurtured this side of themselves, this curious side of themselves, this how I want to be open and explore different things, they can often fall for this disease of new, where this new thing comes in and sort of penetrates into their awareness and takes over anything that they're currently doing and pulls them away from what they're actually meant to be doing. And this is to say that, hey, you can definitely pursue new things, you can still be curious, but if you haven't developed this other side of yourself, whereby you're able to stick through something for a long period of time, then you're always going to miss out on these long-term projects that can bring about these really grounded, deep internal transformations, and also external transformations, meaning that out in the world, you're walking a path where it just continues to rise and rise and rise. And so it's really, really critical that you learn to develop the side of yourself. And like I said, this was a lesson that I had to find out for myself firsthand. And so here's the wild thing. There are these opposing forces within us. And oftentimes we are nurturing one side of ourselves and we're not nurturing these other side of ourselves. And when we're not able to stay on track for a long period of time, often we're nurturing the side of ourselves that wants to seek the new, that wants to seek the novel, that wants to go out there and explore different things. And we're not nurturing the side of ourselves that has more stability, that has more rootedness, that has more groundedness, that has a sense of stay put until the side of yourself is done. And the reason that we often don't nurture the side of ourselves is because it's painful. We don't know how to do it. We're not used to it. We haven't used this part of ourselves for a long period of time. If you were to look into Jungian psychology, we'd be looking at this sort of this introverted sensation side of ourselves, this rooted to self in a way that is connected to the past. And so a lot of people that are into the new, they don't want to connect to the past. They want to move on from the past. And yet it's this, hey, you made a decision in the past, and that decision needs to carry on forward, unless for a really, really, really good reason. Otherwise, you're just going to circulate around different patterns that aren't actually going to help you to move forward. Now, in saying that, that's sort of the theory around it, but I wanted to give you this grounded, practical takeaway that you can use in order to actually start to nurture this part of your soul. If you are somebody that constantly finds yourself veering off path and moving away from past decisions that you've made. And one of the reasons that I want to present this to you is because it helps you to untangle these different underlying beliefs that you might have as to being able to maintain trajectory over a long period of time. It also can help you to connect into your memory and allowing yourself to make sure that you're connected to these past decisions. And finally, it will help you to develop your own soul. Now, the action item itself is to simply record mantras or affirmations in such a way that directly line up with the parts of yourself that need to be developed in order to stay put, right? So it's not just any type of affirmation or any mantra. You're wanting to create ones that are specific and personal for you, that completely point at your personal veering off track and your inability to stay in the same place for a long period of time. And the way to go about doing this is the first thing you want to do is you want to set a really, really clear goal, a clear aim. It has to be clear. So for a lot of people, it could be something like, hey, I want to be more consistent on social media, if that's connected to your vocation. And hey, I want to be consistent on a YouTube or a Substack or a podcast. You'd make that your clear goal, right? I want to be more consistent on posting to YouTube. The second thing you'd want to do is you want to list out all of the different problems and the variety of problems that are going to pop up when pursuing this kind of goal. So it could be something like, in pursuing posting on YouTube, hey, maybe I'm going to be a little bit inconsistent, or I've never shown myself to be someone that can post regularly, or maybe I fear jumping on camera, or maybe I fear that I have to learn certain editing skills. I don't know how to do that, and that learning curve, it's so steep, it's going to be a problem. There's all this variety of problems that you'd list down. So you want to make sure that you know what these problems are. After you've listed them down, you then want to go through the list and you want to reframe them. And you want to reframe them in such a way whereby the person who is pursuing your path could do these really, really easily, or they have these beliefs that make the ones that you're seeing as a problem, they're like, that's not even a problem to me. So to give you an example, if your problem was like, hey, I've had inconsistency problems, you would reframe it and you would write it down on a piece of paper, something like, I find posting consistently on YouTube really easy, right? It's really easy. So it's like the opposite of what your own personal experience with it has been. So if you're struggling with it being inconsistent, you'd rewrite one sentence to say, I find posting on YouTube super easy. After you do that, you would then go ahead and connect all of those different sentences that you've reframed, right? You've reframed them to make them easy, to make them something that looks like super able to just flow through, and you'd connect it with some sort of emotion. So the emotion could be somewhat of a feeling of peace, a feeling of gratitude, a feeling of inspiration, a feeling of being in control or being powerful by being able to do this. And so as an example, you could have, I find posting on YouTube really, really easy. And when I do this, I feel peaceful and calm, or I feel at peace and calm. And by adding in that emotion connected with that belief, what ends up happening is that when you start hearing that, and I'll tell you how you'll start hearing it in a moment, when you start hearing that over and over and over and over again, it starts to seep into the back end of your mind, and it starts to come up against these other beliefs that you have, which is that it's really, really hard, and starts changing it into like, hey, this is actually super easy. And not only is it easy, but you feel more at peace and more calm if you pursue your path in this way. And so it's really important to reframe it. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is that it doesn't always have to be peace and calm. For some people, and you have to know your own buttons as to how to work this, but for some people, they don't need peace and calm. They need more inspiration, right? I feel inspired would be a sentence that you could have at the end. Or I feel powerful, or I feel in control of my life when I am posting this consistently, right? They need more oomph to it. And so if you're that way inclined, then make sure that you do a feeling that is connected to your own personal buttons to get you moving, as opposed to, saying peace and calm, even though you're not that wired that way. And so finally, what you end up doing is you just record these different affirmations and mantras that you've gone ahead and reframed, and you record them. And so the way that I like to do it is I just jump on GarageBand and I go ahead and I record these different affirmations. I've typically whittled the affirmations down to just one page, by the way. So you don't want to have like 1 million. You want to have just a page at max. The less, the better, because we're not trying to fit everything in. We're trying to make the most important ones really be ingrained in who you are and that will help to develop your soul. So the way that I do it is I have a page, max. I'll go ahead and read it and record it via GarageBand or via my phone. Then I'll go ahead and I'll upload it to my Google Drive. Whilst it's in my Google Drive, I'll be able to just play it on my phone and listen to it back. So that's what I would encourage you to do, is to go ahead and record yourself saying those mantras. Now, the mantras only last like 5 to 10 minutes. And so what ends up happening is that you'll want to go ahead and copy and paste those mantras within whatever software that you have. I use a free one like GarageBand. And I just copy and paste until it's about 2 hours long. And that way it can just play on loop when I'm in the car or going to the gym or cleaning my house or going for a walk by myself, as opposed to just 10 minutes and constantly having to like loop it all the time. So you want to make sure that it's at least 2 hours long so that you can just like play it on automatic. And that's what I would recommend. And like I mentioned, being able to listen to them as opposed to have to speak them, I've actually found is not only sort of like the same as having to speak them, but for me, it's actually better. And if you're wanting to go ahead and experiment with that, you can go ahead and test saying your affirmations versus just listening to them. But I find just hearing them all the time is such a great way to deepen into what it is that I'm personally trying to develop, which helps to keep me on track, which helps me to pursue my vocation. And it's really why I haven't moved or budged or veered off track for over half a decade. And so if you're someone that is looking to develop this sense of stability and groundedness and rootedness, then I'd really encourage you to go ahead and do this particular action item here, because it will help you to develop this side of yourself. And by doing that, you will go ahead and you'll deepen your own roots. So rather than going off and purchasing a blueberry farm on a whim and trying to upgrade it all the time, instead you want to start to look at, what do I have here within myself? And what do I need to nurture within myself? And building a practice around mantras and affirmations that continue to nurture this part of you that will give you stability and will give you a sense of a foundation so that you're not constantly missing out on the long-term benefits of your path is incredibly important and is incredibly rewarding. Now, if you would like to learn more about how I help people to develop their paths, to know what their career path is with conviction by unearthing their career archetype, then you'll want to go ahead and check out our online community. So inside of our online community, we have members who are pursuing their paths. They are sharing their experiences as they come into the sense of self-knowledge. So within the online community, we have an 8-week course whereby I show people how to gather self-knowledge, gather things about themselves that they don't even know are within themselves, and bring light to this. And so to give you an idea, we use multiple different perspectives over a 5-week period in the beginning. We use things like astrology, Jungian psychology, feedback loops. We distill multiple different interests into the essence of them. We also look at different temptation paths that look like the right thing, but they're not actually the path for you, so they're taking you away from your calling. We also then, after week 5, we go into this period of week 6, week 7, week 8, where students have already unearthed their career archetype, and we start to map out the actual steps so that you can walk a soul-led career in the modern world, which means, like, what does the actual first step look like? Do you need to go and be educated within a university setting or maybe a non-traditional setting and courses? Do you need to go ahead and start an online business or maybe a brick and mortar business? Like, what does that actually look like for you? We map out those steps and get you going in that direction so that you can start to walk your path in the world. And we also make sure that we look at this underlying psychological component to make sure as well that it's not just the steps, but it's also understood underneath as to how to walk your path. So if you're interested in that, then I would encourage you to go ahead and check out our online community, and I'll see you inside.